Humans inflicted catastrophic losses on the vast alien armada that thought Earth would be easy prey for galactic conquest, teaching the arrogant 1,000-star system Zenari Empire the hard way that our planet was permanently off-limits. Our initial scans showed their technology was completely inferior, Zorgath replied. Only one planet for their species, easy pickings to add to our glorious empire. But they resisted unlike any species we've ever faced, like they wanted it more than us. More? Those primates dismantled our fleet piece by piece, Yaris blasted. 500 warships, 100,000 troops. We expected to enslave their planet in an afternoon, and now look at us, beaten, fleeing with our tails between our legs. Yaris paused, shaking his head at the twinkling stars outside the viewport. So many chances for conquest, and they chose Earth. He seethed silently, then muttered to Zorgath, "They'll pay for defying us. Get another fleet from High Command. We'll return with 100 times the troops and reduce their cities to slag." Zorgath nodded firmly, as Yaris marched out of the room to convene with Zenari High Command. Neither wanted to admit it, but the truth was clear. If the humans could repel 100,000 troops without breaking a sweat, what could 1,000,000 more accomplish except more dead aliens? Earth was permanently off-limits unless the Empire wanted to go extinct. The humans had taught them that the hard way. Zorgath leaned forward, clasping his hands together. What kind of resistance did we face down there? I've never seen our forces so thoroughly decimated. Yaris gritted his teeth, fury simmering in his eyes. The humans, primitive as they were, managed to hack into our communications network before we even began the invasion. Some hacker named Robert Ross infiltrated our systems, stole our battle plans, troop movements, weapon schematics, everything. Exactly. They set up traps and ambushes all over their planet, hitting us where we were weakest. Snipers with crude kinetic weapons picked off our officers from distances we thought impossible. Drones thrown together from scrap swarmed our landing crafts, fouling our engines and formations. And the bombs... Yaris shuddered. Improvised explosives, hidden in the rubble, ripped our ground troops to shreds. Zorgath shook his head in disbelief. All this from one hacker? How... Ross was no ordinary hacker, Yaris said, his voice low. He was ex-military intelligence, part of a secret group, been preparing for an invasion for cycles, called themselves the Ghosts. Had people in every level of their society, government, military, corporations, everywhere. We never saw them coming. Incredible, Zorgath murmured. All our tech, our ships, our weapons, useless. They outplayed us at every turn. Nodded to himself in the dim conference room, curiosity burning in his eyes. Tell me more about these Ghosts. How could a human organization have been so prepared for our arrival? Yaris leaned back in his chair, a grudging respect evident in his voice. They've been around for a long time, Zorgath. Since the early 21st century, in fact. A group of humans from all walks of life, scientists, soldiers, politicians, you name it, got together and realized that an alien invasion was inevitable. They pooled their resources and started building a network of operatives with one goal, to protect Earth at all costs. And they managed to keep this a secret for so long? Zorgath asked, incredulous. Oh, they were clever. They recruited the best of the best, trained them in tactics and espionage that even our own intelligence agencies would envy. That hacker, Ross, he was just one of many. The Ghosts had people everywhere, Zorgath. In governments, in militaries, in corporations, all working behind the scenes to make sure humanity was ready for us. Zorgath shook his head, trying to wrap his mind around the scale of the operation. But how did they know what to prepare for? How did they know our tactics, our weapons? Yaris chuckled darkly. They didn't, but they planned for every possibility. They had secret bases all over the planet, stockpiles of weapons and supplies. They had contingency plans for every scenario they could imagine. And when we finally showed up, they put those plans into action. The sabotage, the intelligence leaks, the ambushes, Zorgath murmured, realization dawning. All the work of the Ghosts. They had sleeper agents in key positions just waiting for the signal, and when it came they hit us hard. Sabotaged our equipment, fed intel to the human militaries, ran covert ops behind our lines. We never stood a chance. Zorgath sat back, stunned by the scope of the humans' preparation. How did we not see this coming? How were we so blind? Yaris sighed, a touch of admiration in his voice. We underestimated them, Zorgath. We thought our technology would be enough, but the humans, they adapt, they improvise. They take what they have and make it work. It's something we've forgotten how to do in our quest for superiority, and it cost us everything. In the dim conference room, Yaris leaned forward, his eyes distant as he recounted the turning point of the invasion. It was Ross and his team of ghosts who changed everything. They infiltrated our flagship, the XSS Dominion, right under our noses. Zorgath's eyes widened. How did they manage that? A mix of stolen Zenari tech and human cleverness, Yaris said. They slipped past our security, got into the central computer core, and what they found there, he shook his head. Proof that we'd been studying Earth for cycles, gathering intel on the humans, their people, resources, weaknesses, but we'd made a critical error. Yaris met Zorgath's gaze. We underestimated them. Thought they were primitive, divided, easy to conquer. Zorgath frowned. And Ross used that against us? Yaris nodded. He and his team planted false reports in our database, made it look like Earth had a secret alliance of advanced civilizations, hiding their true capabilities. The reports were convincing, evidence, simulations, the works, painted a picture of a united humanity, far more advanced than we'd ever imagined. And our leadership believed it? It threw them into chaos, Yaris admitted. Some wanted to keep going, thought it was a bluff. Others wanted to retreat, afraid we'd woken a sleeping giant. High Command was arguing, couldn't agree on a course of action. Zorgath leaned back, processing this revelation. So the humans used our own arrogance against us. Exactly. Yaris's voice was tinged with reluctant respect. We thought we knew everything about them, but we'd barely scratched the surface, and in our hubris we left ourselves open to deception. Yaris nodded grimly. We never saw it coming. The humans played us like fools. As the debate raged on in the Zenari High Command, Yaris found himself at the center of a growing movement. A faction of realists had coalesced around him, arguing that the Zenari's approach to humanity needed a fundamental shift. Zorgath leaned forward, his brow furrowed. You're suggesting we abandon our conquest, treat the humans as equals. Yaris met his gaze, his voice steady. Not equals, Zorgath, but not mere primitives either. The humans are a formidable adversary, with strengths and weaknesses we've never encountered before. We need to reassess, to understand them better. Diplomacy, Yaris said simply. We open a dialogue with Earth, seek to establish relations, learn from them rather than trying to crush them. Zorgath sat back, stunned. What brought you to this conclusion, Yaris? What did you see down there? Yaris was silent for a moment, his eyes distant. I saw unity, Zorgath, cooperation on a scale I never thought possible. Soldiers and civilians, rich and poor, all working together against impossible odds, sacrificing themselves for each other, for their world. He shook his head. We've always seen other species as inferior, as obstacles to our dominion, but the humans, they showed me the error of that thinking. They have something we've lost, Zorgath, something we need to learn from. Yaris leaned forward, his expression determined. I've already begun reaching out to others who share my views. In the military, the government, it won't be easy, but it's the only way forward. We can't beat the humans, Zorgath, but maybe, just maybe, we can learn to understand them. Yaris sighed, the weight of his actions evident on his face. It wasn't easy, Zorgath. When I first proposed the idea of diplomacy, I was met with fierce resistance. The hardliners in the military and the government, they accused me of being a traitor, said I'd gone soft, that I'd been brainwashed by human propaganda. He shook his head, remembering the heated arguments, the threats and accusations hurled his way. They couldn't see what I saw, Zorgath. They were blinded by their own arrogance, their belief in our superiority. They wanted to crush the humans, to make an example of them. Zorgath nodded, understanding the depth of the Zenari's pride. But you didn't give up. No, Yaris said, a hint of steel in his voice. I knew I had to act fast before they could launch another attack, so I reached out to Ross using a captured human comm device, sent him a coded message proposing a meeting. And he agreed just like that? Yaris chuckled. He was cautious, of course, but I think he saw the opportunity, the chance to end this war before it consumed both our species. We agreed to meet in neutral territory, a small asteroid belt on the edge of our space. Zorgath leaned forward, his curiosity piqued. What happened at the meeting? I took a small team of trusted officers, ones who shared my views. We arrived at the coordinates, and there was Ross, with a delegation of human diplomats. Yaris's eyes took on a distant look, remembering the tense first moments of the encounter. We talked for hours, Zorgath, about the war, about our peoples, about the future. I offered to share our technology, our knowledge, in exchange for peace, a non-aggression pact, formal diplomatic relations. Zorgath's eyebrows raised in surprise. And they accepted? Yaris nodded, a small smile playing on his lips. They did. We agreed to a temporary ceasefire, to give us time to work out the details of a more permanent agreement. Incredible, Zorgath murmured, shaking his head. To think, after all this bloodshed, all this destruction, peace might be possible. Yaris leaned forward, his expression serious. It won't be easy, Zorgath. There are still those on both sides who want war, who see the other as an enemy to be destroyed. But if we can make this work, if we can build a bridge between our peoples— He trailed off, the possibilities hanging in the air between them. A future where Zenari and humans stood side by side, not as conqueror and conquered, but as allies, as friends. Zorgath sat back, his mind reeling with the implications of Yaris's actions. You've taken a great risk, Yaris. If the hardliners find out about this meeting— Zorgath's eyes widened as Yaris recounted the latest developments. Admiral Zortox, I've heard of him. A real hardliner, a true believer in Zenari supremacy. Yaris nodded grimly. He's always been a thorn in my side, Zorgath, always pushing for more aggression, more conquest, and now, with the ceasefire in place, he sees an opportunity to seize power. How did you find out about his plans? Zorgath asked, leaning forward. I have my sources, Yaris replied, a hint of pride in his voice. Loyal officers, informants in key positions. They've been keeping an eye on Zortox's movements, reporting back to me. He shook his head, frustration evident on his face. He's been busy, Zorgath, secretly stockpiling weapons, gathering ships and troops. He's preparing for an all-out assault on Earth, to crush the humans once and for all. Zorgath's brow furrowed. But the ceasefire, the peace talks, mean nothing to Zortox, Yaris said, cutting him off. He sees them as a sign of weakness, a betrayal of the Zenari way. In his mind, there can be no peace with the humans, only total domination. Yaris leaned back in his chair, his eyes distant. I knew I had to act fast. I contacted Ross, warned him of the danger. He and his ghosts are working to strengthen Earth's defenses, gathering intel on Zortox's plans. Zorgath nodded, a newfound respect for the human operative evident in his expression. And what about you, Yaris? What's your plan? Yaris met his gaze, determination etched on his face. I have to confront Zortox directly, Zorgath. It's the only way to stop this war before it starts. But how? Zorgath asked, concern in his voice. Zortox has powerful allies, a loyal following. So do I, Yaris said, a hint of a smile on his lips. I've been reaching out to like-minded officers, politicians who share my vision of peace, and not just among the Zenari. He leaned forward, his voice low. I've made contact with leaders of other species, Zorgath, species we've conquered, subjugated. I've offered them a chance to join us, to fight against Zortox and his supporters. Zorgath's eyes widened in surprise. A coalition against the Zenari. Yaris nodded. It's a risk, I know, but it's one we have to take. If we don't stop Zortox now, he'll plunge the galaxy into a war that will consume us all. Zorgath sat back, the weight of Yaris's words sinking in. You're playing a dangerous game, Yaris. If Zortox finds out... I know, Yaris said, his voice grim. But it's a game we have to win, Zorgath, for the sake of the Zenari, for the sake of the humans, for the sake of every species in the galaxy. He stood, his posture straight, his eyes blazing with determination. I'll need your help, Zorgath, your support, your counsel. Together, we can stop Zortox. We can build a new future, a future of peace, of cooperation. Zorgath rose to his feet, clasping Yaris's hand in a firm grip. You have it, Yaris, whatever it takes, whatever the cost. We'll stand together and we'll prevail. In the dim light of the conference room, the two Zenari stood side by side, united in their resolve. The road ahead was uncertain, fraught with danger and risk, but they knew, deep in their hearts, that it was a road they had to walk, for the future, for the galaxy, for the dream of peace that hung in the balance. Yaris's eyes gleamed with intensity as he leaned forward, his voice low and urgent. The discovery of neuroether changes everything, Zorgath. It's not just a powerful resource, it's a window into the very essence of what makes humans unique. Zorgath furrowed his brow, trying to wrap his mind around the concept. Emotions generating energy. It seems impossible. And yet, the data is clear, Yaris insisted. Our scientists have confirmed it. The human brain, in moments of intense feeling, produces a form of energy unlike anything we've encountered. It could revolutionize our technology, our understanding of the universe itself. Zorgath shook his head. But Zortox, he'll use this as an excuse for war. He'll paint the humans as a threat, a resource to be exploited. Yaris nodded grimly. Which is why we must act quickly. Zortox's propaganda machine is already in motion. He's twisting the narrative, turning the Zenari against the humans. How do we stop him? Zorgath asked, a hint of desperation in his voice. Yaris's expression hardened. We expose the truth. We show the Zenari that the humans are not our enemies but potential allies, that neuroether is not a prize to be won, but a discovery to be shared. He paused, his gaze distant. I've spoken with Robert Ross. He understands the gravity of the situation. The humans are willing to work with us, to find a way to harness neuroether for the benefit of both our species. Zorgath's eyes widened. A partnership with the humans? It's the only way forward, Yaris said firmly. If we can prove that cooperation is possible, that the humans are more than just a primitive species to be conquered, it could change everything. He leaned back, his expression thoughtful. But it won't be easy. Zortox has powerful allies, and the hardliners won't give up their dreams of conquest without a fight. Zorgath nodded, his own determination growing. Then we'll have to be smarter, more strategic. We'll need to gather support, build a coalition of those who share our vision. Yaris smiled, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. Exactly. And that's where you come in, my friend, your network, your influence. We'll need every advantage we can get. He stood, pacing the room with restless energy. The first step is to secure the data on neuroether. We can't let it fall into the wrong hands. I have a team working on it now, but they'll need support, protection. Zorgath rose to his feet, his posture straight and proud. Consider it done. I'll assemble my best operatives, ensure the data is safe. Yaris clasped his shoulder, a gesture of gratitude and camaraderie. Thank you, Zorgath. I knew I could count on you. He turned to the viewport, gazing out at the stars. The road ahead is uncertain, full of danger and risk, but if we succeed, if we can bridge the gap between our species, forge a new path forward. His voice trailed off, the possibilities hanging in the air. A future where Zenari and humans stood together, not as conquerors and conquered, but as partners in a greater understanding. And with those words, a new chapter began, a story of unlikely alliances, of the battle against fear and prejudice, of the power of hope in the face of overwhelming odds. The discovery of neuroether had set in motion a chain of events that would reshape the galaxy, and at its center 2 species learning to see each other in a new light. Yaris nodded gravely, the weight of his plan settling on his shoulders. It's a gamble, Zorgath, but one we must take. Zortox will stop at nothing to seize power, and he'll use the neuroether as an excuse for war. Zorgath leaned forward, his brow furrowed. But how will you convince the other leaders? They've been steeped in our ways for so long. By showing them that peace is possible, Yaris replied, his voice steady. That the humans are not our enemies, but potential allies. I've called for a meeting of the High Council, and I've ensured it will be broadcast across the Empire. Every citizen will witness the debate. A bold move, Zorgath murmured. But Zortox will not make it easy. No, he won't, Yaris agreed. But I'm prepared. At the meeting, I will present my case for peace. I'll argue that we have much to learn from the humans, and that war will only bring destruction. I'll reveal the true nature of the neuroether, and how it could benefit both our species if we work together. Zorgath nodded slowly, seeing the logic in Yaris's plan. And Zortox, how will you handle him? Yaris's eyes hardened. He'll denounce me as a traitor, a coward. He'll call for an immediate invasion of Earth. But I have evidence of his true intentions. Of his plot to overthrow the government, to establish himself as a dictator. He's been hoarding weapons, resources, preparing for a coup that would throw our empire into chaos. Zorgath's eyes widened. That's treason. Exactly, Yaris said, and I'll present this evidence at the meeting for all to see. It's a risky move, Yaris, Zorgath warned. Zortox has powerful allies. I know, but I have to try. For the sake of our people, for the sake of the humans, for the future. The day of the meeting arrived, and Yaris stood before the High Council, his heart pounding in his chest. Zortox sat across from him, his eyes glinting with malice. Yaris began his speech, his voice ringing out clear and strong. He spoke of the potential for peace, of the benefits of cooperation. He revealed the neuroether and how it could revolutionize their understanding of the universe. Zortox, as predicted, leapt to his feet, his face twisted with rage. Traitor, he bellowed. You would have us bow to these primitives, abandon our sacred duty to conquer. But Yaris remained calm even as Zortox ranted and raved. And then, at the crucial moment, he played his trump card. Zortox speaks of duty, Yaris said, his voice cutting through the din. But what of his duty to our people, to our government? He held up a data pad, the evidence of Zortox's treachery glowing on the screen. This man who calls for war has been plotting to overthrow our leadership, to seize power for himself, no matter the cost. A murmur ran through the council, and Zortox's face paled. Yaris pressed on, laying out the evidence piece by piece. The secret stockpiles of weapons, the coded communications with rogue elements of the military, the plan for a coup that would plunge the Zenari into civil war. As he spoke, Yaris could see the tide turning. The other leaders, once so certain of Zortox's righteousness, began to shift in their seats, doubt creeping into their eyes. And then a voice from the back of the chamber. I move to open an investigation into these allegations. Another voice and another. A vote was called, and to Zortox's horror the motion passed. Yaris had won the first battle, but he knew the war was far from over. Zorgath, watching from the sidelines, let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. Yaris had played a dangerous game, but it seemed to be paying off. Yaris's eyes were hard, his jaw set with determination. Now, he said, we prepare for the fight of our lives. Zortox won't go down without a fight, and we must be ready. The future of our species, and of the humans, depends on it. As Yaris prepared to deliver his final argument, a murmur rippled through the council chamber. Dr. Xanthos, a Zenari scientist known for his brilliance and eccentricity, stepped forward, his eyes wide with urgency. Esteemed council members, Xanthos began, his voice trembling slightly, I must reveal a truth about the neuroether that will change everything. The chamber fell silent, all eyes fixed on the scientist. Yaris felt a sense of unease creep over him as Xanthos continued. The neuroether is not a gift, but a curse, Xanthos declared. It is the byproduct of a rare and deadly neurological disorder that affects a small percentage of the human population. Gasps and murmurs filled the room. Yaris leaned forward, his brow furrowed. This disorder, which I have named neuroether syndrome, causes the human brain to generate massive amounts of the energy, Xanthos explained. But it comes at a terrible cost. Those affected experience rapid and irreversible mental degeneration, leading to madness, violence, and eventually death. Yaris felt his heart sink as Xanthos went on to reveal that the neuroether was highly unstable and could not be safely harnessed or controlled. Any attempt to extract or utilize the energy, he warned, would likely result in catastrophic consequences for not only the humans, but the entire galaxy. Stunned silence filled the chamber as the implications of Xanthos's words sank in. Yaris sat back in his chair, his mind reeling. His entire plan, his hopes for peace, had been based on a false premise. The neuroether was not the key to cooperation, but a potential doomsday device. Zortox, seeing an opportunity, leapt to his feet. "This changes everything," he declared, his voice ringing with conviction. "We have no choice but to invade Earth and exterminate the human race to prevent the spread of this neuroether syndrome and protect the galaxy from its destructive power." Murmurs of agreement rose from some corners of the chamber, but Yaris refused to give in to despair. He stood, his voice steady despite the turmoil in his heart. "No," he said firmly, "the humans deserve a chance to find a cure for this syndrome. We have a moral obligation to help them, not destroy them." Zortox scoffed, but Yaris pressed on, proposing a compromise. The Zenari would provide the humans with advanced medical technology and scientific expertise in exchange for a promise to contain and control the spread of the neuroether syndrome. As the meeting adjourned, Yaris turned to Zorgath, his eyes weary but determined. "We have won a battle, but the war is far from over," he said softly. "The humans have shown us the true meaning of courage and resilience, but now they face an even greater challenge. We must do everything in our power to help them, not just for their sake, but for the sake of the entire galaxy." Zorgath nodded, a newfound respect for Yaris's leadership growing within him. The future was uncertain, but he knew that the Zenari and the humans had a chance to build a better world together if they had the wisdom and the will to do so. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.